Well, good evening. My name is Jason Pilchard, and I am the senior pastor of Beth Eden Baptist Church. And Beth Eden Baptist School is operated by Beth Eden Baptist Church, and that's why I'm doing this live stream tonight. We are in the midst of a leadership transition with our school, and we have an admin team of about 7 folks that are working very hard to make sure that we will get this school year off to a great start. And so in a lot of ways, I'm just standing here speaking to you as a representative of that team. This is the second of 3 live stream events. The first event was last Monday night, and we focused on 5 different categories of things that you needed to be aware of as we are beginning this 2020-2021 school year. Number 1, we are offering live in-person classes beginning on Wednesday, August 26th. Second, we are strengthening our remote option, Nights Mobile, for families who would not feel comfortable having their students in the classroom quite yet and would like to have their student as a Beth Eden student but remotely to begin the school year, or in the event that there is a COVID-19 breakout and we would have to go exclusively mobile, then we would be better equipped to serve our students and families that way. The third was we talked about a flexible schedule that we are introducing for the 2021 school year, and that flexible schedule includes blocking our core classes in the mornings, Monday through Friday, for our elementary students, and then Monday through Thursday in the mornings until about 2 o'clock for our secondary students. That allows us later in the day from 2 o'clock to 3:30 for elementary, Monday through Friday, and on Friday for secondary from 8:15 to 2 o'clock to be able to offer our special classes like music, art, PE, and some of our student life activities. We know that not all families will feel comfortable yet having their students in the classroom for those special classes. So we've blocked them so that you would be able to have that choice. Our plan is to introduce our specials the week of October 5th. Tonight, we are going to spend quite a bit of time talking about our COVID-19 response plan. And then finally, this year, we want to put our best effort into what's most important. We want first things to be first in our school, even in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic. And we want to do that in a fun way. And so we introduced last week our theme for the school year, which is the theme of greater than. That is taken from John 3, verse 30, where John the Baptist says, "He must increase, I must decrease." This year we're going to spend our Bible chapel hours meditating on the fact that all of the wonderful attributes of God and then what those mean for us. We have tried to wed that spiritual theme with a fun camp type theme, a tropical theme. That's why tonight I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I don't know that I've ever worn a Hawaiian shirt in public before tonight, but I think I could kind of get used to this. So if you would like to know more about those big 5 categories, you can watch last week's live stream, which is posted on this same page. There will be one more live stream, and that is next Monday night, where we will give attention to how we are implementing our what we call specials: music, sports, art, and student life. And that'll be next Monday, August 17th, beginning at 7 p.m. Tonight, however, we are going to spend our time talking about Beth Eden's plan for responding to this COVID-19 situation. And last week, we kind of introduced some spiritual Christian perspectives that would guide our thinking on this topic. And so I just want to review those quickly. 5 Christian COVID-19 perspectives. we understand that not everybody is in the exact same place pertaining to COVID-19 and how local governments, federal government have responded to COVID-19. We're kind of along a wide spectrum. Some folks may fall on the one extreme into the category of, well, this is an existential threat and we can't do too much to protect ourselves or others. Others might go on the other extreme, which would be COVID-19 and the responses have been way too overblown. We all think our view of COVID-19 is right and balanced and everyone would be better off if they just viewed it like we do, but they don't. And so, managing any organization, especially a Christian organization, at a time like this requires that we bring some very clear Christian principles to the table. We are operating or striving to operate on the basis of 5 of them. Number 1, courage. As believers, we are not afraid even of death. So we're certainly not afraid of sickness, and so we want to have a spirit of courage and Christian hope. Second, we do recognize that the authorities that are placed over us by God, and that we don't necessarily have to agree with an authority to honor, submit, and obey to them, only in the event that that authority calls us to do something that is directly opposed to the Scripture. In that case, then we may be required to practice civil disobedience. But other than that, we look for opportunities to honor, submit, and obey our authority. A third category of Christian perspective is simply the category of safety, or you could use the word stewardship, that we recognize that our bodies are ultimately God's. And so we are to honor Him with our bodies, which means it is prudent for us to do all we can do to avoid any kind of illness, specifically one that we really don't know all of what the long-term consequences could be for contracting this virus. In addition to that, a fourth category would be love. That we recognize that others may hold to a different position regarding COVID-19 than I do. And so Philippians 2 says that we are to regard others as more important than ourselves. We are to look out for the interests of others and consider those. We as a school family have both students and faculty that would fit into the category of high risk. In fact, we have many of them who have already said, we're planning on being back in the classroom this fall. And so Christian love says, even if I don't feel I have to take this precaution for my own benefit, that I may need to take this precaution for the benefit of someone else. And then finally, this category, the category of wisdom, recognizing, for instance, that we don't want to put ourselves in a position of danger or liability, unnecessary liability, where if we don't do due diligence, we could find ourselves in a really dangerous place. And so we are striving to bring all 5 of those categories of Christian thinking to the table and how we respond to COVID-19. Here's the bottom line for us. We will follow whatever is required of us by the CDC, Colorado Department of Health and Education, and the Jefferson County Public Health, as long as it does not directly contradict our obedience to the Bible. Beyond that, we will filter our decisions through that 5-part filter. And so we are striving to bring a common sense, Beth Eden approach to this situation. And so to that end, we have isolated 7 categories of practical responses. And I should just note, as we begin to look at these 7 categories, that things are changing rapidly. I had the privilege of serving for 6 years as the camp director of Camp Eden, another ministry of Beth Eden Baptist Church, 45 minutes northwest of here. And when we were at Camp Eden, we used to put on all of our schedules that this schedule is subject to change with or without a moment's notice. And I think it's good for us to be reminded of that in regards to COVID-19. We simply don't know where things will be 3 months from now, a month from now, or even just a few weeks from now when school starts. Our goal with these 7 categories is to implement them in as unintrusive, in the background kind of way as we possibly can, meaning we want to meet these requirements. We want to be safe, but we don't want to do that in such a way that it becomes the thing that defines our school year. And so we're going to take just a few moments in each of 7 categories. Number 1, well checks and attendance standards. 2, safe spacing. 3, small groups. 4, contact with limited number of teachers. 5, hand washing and face coverings. 6, facility cleaning. And then number 7, response plans. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of COVID-19'd out. I would guess you probably are too. We probably would prefer to be weighing other matters. But we're going to do this as best as we possibly can because we want to be safe and we want to care for one another. So the first category is well checks and attendance. Well checks and attendance. In my estimation, this is the most important part of our response. And it's the one that's going to take the highest amount of working together. These well checks and attendance standards apply for all teachers and all students. We want to keep in-person education going, and so we're going to need your help. There are 2 major parts to the well checks. The first part is a home check that you as families will be responsible for. This will require that you have a simple check sheet. We're going to send those to you as that will be assembled kind of like a notepad where you'll peel one off every day. And your responsibility will be to check that your student does not have certain symptoms before they come to school. And those symptoms are these symptoms. So congestion or runny nose, a fever of 100.4 or greater, a cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, diarrhea, headache, nausea or vomiting, sore throat, muscle pain and fatigue, chills, or a new loss of taste or smell. And we recognize, as do those that have advised us pertaining to the health component of these COVID-19 plans, that adults and children do tend to present differently when it comes to COVID-19. But we also understand that even within adults or within children, that sometimes they present differently. And so that's a fairly comprehensive list of symptoms. So your students or our staff should not come to school if you fit one of these 3 categories. You have been in close contact, meaning within 6 feet or more, 6 feet for more than 15 minutes with anyone who's confirmed with COVID-19 within the past 2 weeks. That's the first category. Second category, students and staff should not come to school if they have a fever of 100.4 or greater. And the third category is, you should not come to school if you have 2 or more COVID-19 symptoms. And again, by those symptoms, we are meaning that list that was on the infographic before, things like congestion or headache or cough or diarrhea, that are not otherwise explained. And that does leave some room for those that have pre-existing conditions or who may have actually been diagnosed with some kind of illness other than COVID-19. And so, just a quick review, students and staff should not come to school if they've been in contact with closer than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes with someone over the past 2 weeks that was diagnosed with COVID-19, if they have a fever of more than 100.4, or if they have 2 or more of those symptoms that are not otherwise explained. And again, parents, That is your responsibility. And to maintain accountability on that, because we're not just responsible for your kids, but we're responsible for the health and well-being of your kids' classmates as well. We'll actually ask each parent when they drop off their children to provide us that simple form saying that my child does not meet any of those conditions. But then we also want you to know that when your students arrive at school, we will also do a very simple temperature check. And so you will meet at one of 4 designated locations on our property where when your student gets out of the car, before you drive away, you will meet a teacher or a volunteer. You'll give them that simple check sheet that demonstrates that your student does not fit in one of those 3 categories. And then we will use a non-contact thermometer to do a quick temperature check. When we give you the thumbs up, then you are free to drive away and your student will be able to go into their classroom. Now, we are providing for you tonight, and these maps will be posted on our website right near this live stream recording when it posts, 2 sets of maps. The first map is a map of where your students will enter and exit the buildings. And so in keeping with our tropical Hawaiian theme, we have 4 temperature check locations, and then the students will proceed from there. So the red one will be exclusively for preschool. The pineapple one will be for those who are in 9th through 12th grade. The palm tree one will be for those that are in kindergarten through 4th grade, and then the sea turtle one will be for those that are in 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade. And so you can imagine, parents, as you are preparing to drop your children off for the day, if you have kids in multiple grades, that could actually mean multiple drop-offs. And we've worked hard to have a safe and smooth flowing car line for many years. And so we have adjusted the car line as well. And so the next map that you'll see on the screen is a traffic flow map that will help you understand how you proceed through the parking lot when you arrive to drop off your kids. At each location, if you need to drop off a student where they're going to have their temperature check and deliver their well-checked card before they go into the building, you simply pull off to the left and form a line there, while those who don't need to stop there will pass on the right. And we're going to use the entirety of our driveway. So after you get past the first 2 checks, you'll drive past on the north side of our property, come around the west side of the new gym building, and then there will be 2 checks over there. Once you have dropped off your children, then you'll be free to come around on the south side of the auditorium and leave the parking lot. Say, well, what happens if a student comes down with symptoms while they are here at school? We appreciate the effort that you're taking to have us as parents help with well checks and even the temperature checks. What happens if somebody comes down with symptoms while they're at school? That's a good question. If a student begins feeling sick during school hours, we will remove them from class. We have set up an isolation room right off of our school office, so it will have easy access for those that would come to pick up the students. And then we would ask every family to have what we will call a 1-hour pickup plan, so that in the event that your student demonstrates symptoms of COVID-19 or illness symptoms during the school day and they have to be placed in isolation, we will contact you and we would like you to come to pick up your student within 1 hour. As a final note in this category, Parents and, in fact, all visitors will not be allowed into the buildings except for the office area when picking up a student who has been isolated. Parents will be welcome to bring their students park and bring their students up to their temperature check areas and pick them up from those temperature check areas, but they will not be permitted to come into the building at least at the beginning of the school year. Second category is safe spacing. I'd like to read a quote from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment and Education. They're the ones that have provided guidelines for schools reopening. They said this, that 6 foot between student spacing reduces transmission and should be preferred. 3 foot distancing still provides substantial benefits and is acceptable in the context of a comprehensive disease control strategy. Here's what that means for us. In planning for this year, we believe that good guidelines or good rules are enforceable, meaning if you can't realistically enforce it, even with the best efforts of the teachers and the students working together, then it may not be a good guideline or a good rule. So we've established 2 safe spacing standards that we think will serve our students well. First of all, in our classrooms, we have the goal of 6 feet of spacing between students where they'll be sitting at their tables or desks. Or if we can't accomplish that, we'll put some kind of clear divider between those students. But then, in our transition times or at recess, so in the hallways or as they're going out to recess or as they are at recess, we have established the goal and kind of keeping with our theme for this year, a Hawaiian tropical theme, we want each student to imagine that they have a hula hoop around them. And they don't want to get that hula hoop to overlap with another student's hula hoop. And we feel that that will represent about a 3 foot distance between the students as they're in common places like a hallway or at recess or in some kind of line going from one place to another. So that'll be our goal with safe spacing through the beginning part of this school year. The third category of things that we need to talk about are smaller groups. To begin the school year, and following health and education leaders' recommendations, we will not meet in any large groups. So some of the groups that we have historically met with are large game groups, assemblies, choirs or orchestras. Even our chapels are going to be live streamed to the classrooms. But to prevent the spread, we have also isolated into smaller groups. These groups will have their own building entrances and exits and will utilize their own restrooms. Groups will not have contact with any other groups. And so, you have probably heard of these groups in the news, in workspaces, or in educational settings. They're called cohorts. A simple definition of a cohort would be a small, isolated group. For this year, keeping with our island theme, we'll call our groups crews. And so those are cohorts, and their locations we'll refer to as islands, just to keep it fun. So our crews and our island locations for this school year are as follows. Castle Kids will be its own crew, and they'll be the only ones in Building 2. Kindergarten through 2nd grade will be a crew, and they'll be in Building 3. Also, 3rd and 4th grade will be a crew, and they'll also be in Building 3. 5th and 6th grade, that class will meet in the Bradford Chapel. Yes, 5th and 6th grade, you heard it. Your classroom for at least the fall of 2020 is the Bradford Chapel. 7th and 8th grade will be in Building 1, and they will have the entirety of Building 1. 9th and 10th grade will be in Building 4, and 11th and 12th grade. 11th and 12th grade get their own large spaces. 11th grade will be in the old gym, and 12th grade will be in the youth room. That will be their class. And so for each one of these small groups, they'll have their own entrance, their own exit, their own bathrooms, and they'll be their own group. On the elementary level, with the exception of the possible spread and with the expectation of a possible spread and with the prospect of having teachers out and potentially even for a prolonged period of time, we are going to, at times, intentionally combine classes within crews during the week for the purpose of preparing students so that in the event the two classes have to be combined for a prolonged period of time, those students are already familiar with that other teacher. A fourth category of response is limited contact with a limited number of teachers. Contact with a limited number of teachers. This was not hard for us to develop, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. We have adjusted our elementary schedule, as you know. So elementary will meet for their core subjects from 8:15 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Specials will begin October 5th from 2 o'clock, and I think the screen actually has a mistake. It should say 3:30 instead of 3 o'clock. In August and September, so before we begin introducing the specials block, elementary students will have contact with only 2 or 3 teachers per day. That, of course, will increase when specials begin. On a secondary level, as you know, we have introduced the Monday through Thursday schedule, 8:15 to 2 o'clock. And beginning the week of October 5th, when we begin specials on Friday, that will be from 8:15 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Here's what we have not yet announced. We are going to do our secondary core classes in block schedules. So, for instance, if you are in 9th grade, you will have one class that lasts for the first 2 hours of Monday and Wednesday. You have a second class that lasts for the 3rd and 4th hours of Monday and Wednesday. You'll have lunch, a Bible class, and then a 5th hour class that goes Monday through Thursday. And so the block classes will be on Monday and Wednesday, and then Tuesday and Thursday for our secondary. And the reason we went with that approach was so that in August and September, secondary students will have contact with only 3 or 4 teachers per day, whereas normally they would have had contact with more like 5 or 6 teachers a day. And of course, as we mentioned with elementary, that will increase when specials begin. A fifth category of response for us at Beth Eden is hand washing and face coverings. So in regards to hand washing, we have placed touch-free hand sanitizer dispensers in each island. In addition to that, we've placed visual reminders for hand washing in all of our restrooms. And you can see an example of that sign that is on your screen. In addition to that, students will be taught how to wash their hands and encouraged to wash their hands at these times: the beginning and the end of the school day, before and after lunch, before and after recess or use of playground equipment, and of course, after using the restroom. Another category that I know everybody's wondering about, and that is face coverings. We mentioned a little bit of this last Monday, but I'll review it tonight. We will follow whatever federal or local requirements are given us pertaining to face coverings. If face coverings are optional, we will allow them to be optional, but we will work hard to enforce family preferences. it should be noted that face coverings, we are okay with a little bit of personality with the face coverings, but they should meet Beth Eden Baptist School dress guidelines. And then fourth, we are committed to not allowing any kind of hazing or bullying or teasing for whatever students have to do on either side of wearing face coverings or not. So we're committed to having a judgment-free Christian environment. If the school year were to start today, here's how we would apply what we understand of the current Colorado mask mandate. And I should remind all of us that that mask mandate expires only a few days from now. Here's how we would apply that. Faculty and staff would be required to wear face coverings. Students 11 and older would be required to wear face coverings, but face coverings for students 10 and under would be optional. And again, we include that screen with a giant asterisk over it because that could change even before the school year begins. A sixth category of response is our facilities. We will seek to maintain our already high standard of facility cleaning and maintenance. Second, classroom desks and common space high-touch surfaces will be disinfected throughout the day and at the end of each school day. In addition to that, restroom stalls will be marked off to facilitate safe spacing. Water fountains are being modified in all of our buildings to function as touchless water bottle filling stations. In addition to that, lunches will be eaten in the classrooms. And the reason for that is so that we don't have to merge our crews or have them leave their spaces, their islands. And so lunches will be eaten in the classrooms. At least for this first semester, we will not be providing a hot lunch program. But microwaves will be provided, and so your students will have access to those. Our final category for COVID-19 response is our response plans. And most schools have 4 categories of response plans. What happens if a student comes in contact with someone who has COVID-19? What happens if someone, a student or a faculty member begins to show symptoms of COVID-19? What if there's actually a student who has a confirmed case of COVID-19, or if there is a COVID-19 breakout? We'll talk tonight about the first 3 of those categories. What if someone comes in contact with someone who has COVID-19? Well, they may return to school after a 14-day quarantine, which means if they have had contact with someone who has a confirmed case of COVID-19, they've been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, they would be quarantined for 14 days after having contact with that COVID-19 positive person. After that, they would be able to come back to school. Second, symptoms. If someone has a low-grade fever, below 100 and 100.4, without any other COVID-19 related symptoms, or an alternate diagnosis as determined by a medical provider, then that student may return to school after 24 hours have passed since recovery. If a person shows symptoms of COVID-19, so they have a fever of 100.4 or greater, or 2 or more COVID-19 symptoms that are not otherwise explained, they may return to school after 72 hours have passed since recovery, and by recovery mean defined as resolution of fever without the use of medications or improvement in symptoms. So that would be someone who shows that they had symptoms of COVID-19, but maybe after taking a test for COVID-19 didn't prove to have it. What if there's an actual case? Well, we'll consider 2 cases, one person who's symptomatic and another person who's asymptomatic. The person who's symptomatic, who had a confirmed case, may return to school after 10 days have passed since symptoms first appeared and at least 72 hours passed since recovery. Then, if someone is asymptomatic, they may return to school after 10 days have passed since the positive test. If the individual develops symptoms, then that 10-day isolation period restarts. And so all that to say this. These are our 7 categories of practical response. Well checks and attendance standards, safe spacing, small groups, contact with limited number of teachers, hand washing and face coverings, facility cleaning, and our response plans. Now you may be asking, as families, how can we help with this? Can I give you just a few very practical suggestions? Number 1, pray with your student. Would you pray with your student for our faculty and staff as we try to continue to keep school as normal as possible while needing to implement all of these standards? Would you pray that with your student that God would give them grace to have a good attitude toward others who may view COVID-19 a little bit differently than your family does? Would you pray that by God's grace this year we would avoid any kind of COVID-19 outbreak in our student body? Second, make sure that you complete the COVID-19 waiver and family mask preference form. We're going to post that on our website. It'll be something that you can download and fill out and then return to us. Basically, what that waiver says is you understand that there is some level of inherent risk in sending your student to a school in spite of our best efforts where they could potentially contract COVID-19, and that you will not hold the school liable in the event that that were to take place. In addition to that, on the waiver form, we will have a section where you can identify, in the event that masks are optional, what you intend to do with your students, which will let us know what we are supposed to enforce. Number 3, be faithful about completing those home well checks. We'll send you a form that you can use for the first day, but then the first day when you drop off your students, you'll get a notepad with peel-off charts that you can complete each day, and you can turn those into us at the temperature check stations so that your student can come into class. I'm sure that some of you are asking, what are you planning on doing with those completed well check forms? Well, the only thing that we have to turn in or report to the government are actual confirmed cases of COVID-19. Other than that, we'll just keep those with your student records, and that's just a way of making sure in the event that there was any kind of liability concern that we had done our part to allow students into school that were healthy and were meeting that baseline standard. Number 4, have a plan for the 1-hour window. In previous years, it may have been wise to, in some cases, allow students with some symptoms to just tough it out. It will not be that case this year, and so you should plan have a plan so that in the event that your student begins to show some of these symptoms during the school day, that in 1 hour at any time of the school day you could pick up your student. 5, encourage safe spacing. Do that with your students. Just remind them that we're in a weird season. There's a lot that we don't know about COVID-19, but we do know this. We do know that it's very contagious. And we do know that some people who contract it get very sick. And so from that perspective, we're just being kind by maintaining spacing from other students. 6, send lunches and water bottles. We will not be offering a hot lunch program, so your student needs to bring their lunch with them. Please bring a water bottle. We have those refillable water stations, but they won't be able to actually use the drinking fountain. And then we learned when I was in 5th and 6th grade, with my 5th and 6th grade teacher, Mrs. North, she reminded us that attitude is everything. And there's a lot that we can't control in this strange season, but we can respond properly to all of these different changes that we have to endure for this time. And so let's try and have a good attitude about it. Let's try and work together as a team. And let's make 2020, 2021 maybe one of the best school years that we've ever had. I want to say thank you to all of you as families. We've sent out multiple surveys over the last few weeks. You've done a great job of responding to those. Of course, as always, we have a few families that just have concluded that for this year, it's not best to have their students at Beth Eden Baptist School. But the overwhelming majority in the last week have said, we are planning to have our kids back at Beth Eden Baptist School and in person. And so we are excited about beginning the school year in just a couple of weeks. And we want to appeal, if there is anybody who's still looking for a Christian school like ours that values educational excellence in a caring Christian atmosphere. And maybe you have seen this video and see how we're trying to respond, hopefully in a balanced and God-honoring way to this strange season. If you'd be interested in enrolling your student, or you have a friend or family member who may be interested in enrolling their student, please contact our school office, 303-232-2313, or office@BethEdenSchool.org. We would love to hear from you. Please let us know if you have any questions from this live stream or the one last week. We look forward to seeing you again in 1 week. Have a great evening.